Today on Simply Happy Conversations, I'm talking with Angela Lockwood. She's an executive coach and also an occupational therapist, and she has a book and is also a podcaster, and her podcast is Distracted. So that is exactly why I've asked her on today, to actually give us some ideas to help us and our kids stay focused in such a distracted world. Welcome, Angela.
Thanks so much for having me, Narelle. I really look forward to having a conversation with you because your podcast is amazing. So thanks very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you. So let's start. If you were a Barbie doll, what two accessories would you come with?
Oh, do you know what? I probably wouldn't even think of the accessories. I'd probably more, if I was Barbie, think about the energy that I'm bringing.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
yeah, I don't even think accessories come into my thinking, to be honest, Narelle. I'd probably, I don't know, if I was going to something, I'd be thinking about, well, like, what do I need to bring to this interaction to make the most of it, and just trying to focus on that.
Yep. So what about if you were to get a bit of insight into your hobbies that you like outside of work, or maybe it is work? Is there anything that could sort of show your link with your work or your interests?
Yeah, do you know, it's interesting because my work, I sound so
Yeah.
boring here, but I love my work so much. And I find my creativity and my joy comes through my work. And I've worked for myself for over 20 years now. And so it's really hard for me to distinguish the difference between my work and who I am sometimes, because I feel like I bring so much of who I am into my work. But things I love to do is I love space. So I love being outdoors. I love this again. My gosh, I'm listening to myself and I'm thinking I love long walks on the beach.
Yeah.
I love it's all that stuff that we sort of know is really good for us. And it sounds tacky, but it's really not. It's the simple stuff. So I love spending time with my kids. I love being outdoors, just hanging out with friends. I love reading, just all of those. I don't know. I love going to the gym. I'm not a complicated person. I like just to do the stuff that makes me feel great.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, the things that you enjoy
Yeah.
and light you up outside. But I'm the same. I love my work as well, so it would be something that's significant, like maybe a measuring tape to show my work as well.
I have to admit, Narelle, that professional organizing is like, I would feel if I could be reincarnated, I'd come back and do that, to be
Oh,
honest.
would
I just
you?
love your work. And I think I would be really good at it because I like simplicity. I like, I sort of live and breathe my messaging, but gosh, I love doing it for other people too. So
Oh,
maybe in another life,
yes.
I'll come back and do that.
Yep. Oh yeah, like I love the dopamine hit. I was a teacher originally, so I'm like, why did I even go in there? I love this way more than teaching. Yeah.
Yeah, I always love watching the shows where, people come
Yes.
into someone's house and just, help them declutter and all that sort of thing. I love watching those shows. So when you asked me to be a guest on here, I was like, oh, this is cool. I may not do it for a living, but I can sort of be in your presence at least.
Yes. It's so funny because I'll watch those shows on the weekend and my family will come in and go, Mum, what are you watching? Don't you get enough of that? I'm like, no, I love it. It's just everything. Anyway, then I just jump off. Okay, guys, we'll watch a movie, whatever you want to watch, not organizing. So, what is it with your work? Why is helping people find focus something that's really important to you?
It always has been. And yes, there is a personal story that probably kick-started everything. I did have a head injury when I was 17, and um, I look back at that time, obviously being 17, I was in my last year of high school. My brain, I was hit in the temple with a hockey ball and sustained quite a significant skull fracture. And my brain sort of couldn't do what it used to do. And what I found really quickly is that I needed to look after my brain. And when anything was overwhelming, whenever anything, whether it be environmental, whether it be too many instructions, whether it be too many people talking around me, my brain would actually hurt. And so what I had to do pretty early on is relearn, how do I do all the things I want to do in my life still with the brain that I have? And that sort of kick-started my awareness of the importance of using our brain really well and understanding the energy that we give our brain, and thinking about the environment that we live in as well, and how do we make everything work so we can still lead this amazing life and do all the things. So it did start from a personal point, but then as I became an occupational therapist, I really quickly noted that distraction and overwhelm was having a really negative impact on a lot of people's lives, and whether that be little kids who were trying really hard to learn in class, and they just didn't know where to focus. They didn't know where to turn their attention. They were getting in trouble. And you being a teacher, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? They would get in trouble for not being able to sit still when their little brains actually needed to move. And so I worked, pretty much for 20 years in schools alongside teachers, helping them understand focus and movement and energy and how does all that work. But also while doing that, I started to notice that adults also struggled with this. And the more that I spoke at conferences and events, people started to come up to me and go, hey, I actually need you to help me with this. And I find it really hard to stay focused. I get really distracted. And really, Narelle, the last probably 2 years more than ever, the demand for what I talk about has exponentially grown again. It sort of feels like it hits a tipping point sometimes and then it goes to the next level. And I'm noticing that distraction is really debilitating for people, and not knowing where to focus has become a real challenge. And so why focus is because I see the impact of the lack of focus that has on people's well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, but also that, am I living my purpose? And that's a pretty big thing to say. But when you feel pulled in so many different directions, what I see a lot in adults is we go, well, what's the point? What am I actually doing? Am I living my life with meaning? And these things can actually really keep people stuck and not living a fulfilling life. So from a personal starting point, and then through working with distracted brains in kids, and then also working with adults to help them really be able to thrive doing what they want to do. So I don't know, I feel like focus has been my thing for a very long time.
Yeah, and it's just that it's had its different ways of presenting it, but focus is that underlying thing the whole way through, isn't it?
Yeah. Focus and knowing where to turn our attention. And I think a lot of times, I do talk about focus. My podcast is Distracted, but often it's the skill of knowing how to use our brains and understanding the way that we learn, understanding what's important to us is just as equally as important as focus. So I just try to simplify the message as much as I can, because the irony in it is that we sometimes overcomplicate trying to find focus. And it just keeps us in this, downward spiral, or this loop that just we keep chasing our tail.
Yes. I think one of your podcasts you shared about your experiment with your watch. I absolutely love that, because I don't have notifications on mine. It's just literally a time for the time so I can know what I'm doing. And people are always like, why don't you put, I'm like, no, after I heard you talking about your experience of it, I was like, I can't, because it just distracts me. It takes my focus away, even just for that minute and that few seconds. And then it's really hard to come back, go, oh, what was I doing? Where were we? So it's like, I just loved hearing your experiment and go, oh, I'm not the only one who doesn't like the notifications all over their phone or on their watch. And, the movement, and it's like telling you something else. So you need to do this and you need to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nora. I'm so glad that you got that out of it. And just for people, I guess, listeners who haven't heard that episode, is I talked about my smartwatch experiment. I always seem to jump on my soapbox when I talk about smartwatches, and probably polarize 80% of the people in the room. But I decided to put my money where my mouth is and trial a smartwatch. And as you know, sitting in front of the TV on a Friday night with my teenage kids, and I'm sitting there having a cuddle with them, watching a movie on pizza night that we have every Friday night. And this silly smartwatch kept buzzing, telling me to stand up. And I remember looking at the kids going, there is no way right now that I am going to move from this position. In fact, if I stay in this position for the rest of my life, I am so happy. My kids cuddling me, life is happy, hubby's on the lounge behind us. Like, it was just amazing, right? And this notification's telling me to move, that, to change all of that. And now I know that I could have ignored it, but the whole thing was an experiment with the watch. And I think it was a perfect example of how often we set ourselves up to fail when it comes to finding focus. We create systems in our life to add complication when really what we're trying to do is simplify. And smartwatches, yes, they have their use for some things, but really do we need to invite that much into our lives that we want to strap it on our wrist? And my thoughts on that is, I don't want that in my life. I don't need it in my life. A smartwatch doesn't add value to my life. So I threw it across the room.
And so do you wear a watch?
No, I don't wear
No,
a watch.
you don't need one.
And in fact, I haven't worn a watch. And this was an amazing mentor that I had, I even think probably 15 years ago. I was an occupational therapist that had a practice at the time. So my life was very much revolved around hourly sessions. I was also a personal trainer and aerobics instructor at the time. So I just felt like I was always counting. So I was either during the day, I was watching hour by hour. In the mornings and nighttime, I was counting, rounds of things. And I shared this with her, and I said, I feel like time dominates my life. And she said, why don't you remove your watch and see what happens? And I was like, I can't do that. I can't, you need a watch. You need to know what time it is. But what I really quickly found, Narelle, is that there is time around us everywhere. If I wanted to know the time, I can look anywhere. I can look at the clock on the wall. I can look at my phone if I wanted to. And there were moments where, that was important. But most of the time, I didn't need to know what time it was. And so I haven't worn a watch since. And in fact, a watch on my wrist now almost causes a little bit of I feel like I'm distracted by it, even just a standard analog watch. I know for some people, this is what, some people love it. I personally don't. So no, I haven't worn a watch for about 15 years, except that one night of my smartwatch experiment.
And that's the last time. You don't need that. So how can we prevent distractions in our homes, around our family then, other things that we can do?
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm preaching to the converted here, speaking with you, Narelle. But look, I often will say to people, what we do is we focus our attention on the distractions and trying to manage that. But what we're feeling in society is that distractions are overwhelming us. There are so many. We're putting so much attention into the distraction that we're not actually taking the time to take a step back from it and go, well, where do I want my focus to be? So I just want to, it's a really important distinction, because we're looking at all the things we need to do and going, how can I minimize all this? By watches, by using new apps, by new systems, going and buying that new thing that says it's going to help me stay organized,
Yes.
And what that does, and through mentoring people for so many years, that stuff actually complicates it all. And because people don't want to do the work to go, well, what is all of that distracting me from? And that's where that whole work-life balance stuff, that's why it sort of doesn't really work, just trying to find balance, because we need to ask those questions that bring awareness to, well, what is really going on? Why are things out of balance? Why can't I do it all? But from a distraction point of view, if we don't actually go, well, all of that stuff's distracting me, if we don't ask ourselves, what is it distracting us from, then all we're doing is just adding noise.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you mentioned my book, 2017, I wrote a book called Switch Off, How to Find Calm in a Noisy World. Now, that's a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
And it has been republished since, but I think, again, it could be republished and I don't have to touch a thing, because the distractions are getting more. The noise is getting more is getting louder. The interruptions are getting more frequent, and we just seem to not be learning how to manage that. And I think managing the distractions and thinking we can do that is actually setting us up for failure.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same, that goal coming into someone's house and they go, I've got all the containers. And it's like, hang on a minute. What's the goal though? What are we trying to achieve here? That's what we need. We don't need all the containers. It's along that same line of thinking, isn't it?
Look, absolutely, but I am going to have to say I love a good container. I love, like, we have a joke in my family, if you stand still, mum will label you. So I love my label makers. I love all of that. But what I recognize, one of my stress, I guess, things I've learned about myself is when I'm stressed, I organize.
Oh
I
yeah.
organize. So it's like a trigger for me to go, hey, you're labeling something again that probably doesn't need to be labeled. And that to me is going, you feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You're trying to get a little bit of control back in your life. And I think this again comes back to the sort of the last question you asked me was, it's having that awareness and taking the time to become aware. That does take a little bit of insight. It takes sometimes a little bit of asking yourself some hard questions that we're not actually very comfortable with, but it's so worth the energy and the effort if we can ask ourselves some of those difficult questions, because the how to just is so much easier.
Yes,
And
once
it's
you've got why, that behind the scenes and addressing those
yeah,
is definitely going to help, isn't it?
exactly.
So what about decision making? So people need to make decision making and they feel overwhelmed. What's some things that, especially like letting go of things in your home? Because that's one of the things that I find, people come to me and say, I'm just feeling so overwhelmed and there's so much clutter. But a lot of it's either clutter because they're not sure, they're worried about letting go because of the money. But the other thing is around the emotional attachment to it as well. So have you got any tips around addressing that decision making?
Yeah, I love this because I don't know if you know this, but the very first book I wrote was actually on decision making. So it's
Oh,
called,
no, I didn't.
yeah, so it's called The Power of Conscious Choice. And it was how we make decisions. And I talk about in there, I'm fascinated by how people make decisions, and again, probably how we overcomplicate decisions. And in that, I talk about the importance of intuition and logic working together. So, to answer your question, the tip around how do you make decisions around this is actually the question of why.
Mm.
Why is it important to them? Because, and I would imagine this would be really tricky in your line of work, is not putting your own value set on something, because even though it doesn't seem important to us, it might be super important to that person, and understanding why is important. And if we can help, not if we can help, like, look at me, I'm already taking your job here. I want to do it so much. I'm like projecting myself here. But for people who are looking and going, I feel really cluttered, and they don't have somebody like you working with them, actually going, why is this really important to me?
Yeah.
Is it? And I know that there's all the spark joy, and I get that, but some things actually don't spark joy. Some things spark something deeper. And asking people, asking you why. And again, it could be something even a little bit more superficial. Why do you need 10 spatulas?
Yeah.
And it's like, looking at your drawer and going, it is so full. Do I really need 10 spatulas? And usually it's, no, you don't need 10 spatulas. And so asking that question of why is it important? Why do you need it? And again, it's coming up with that level of awareness, isn't it? It's the tricky stuff. It's not the moving things around or buying new things or new apps or anything like that. It's actually doing a little bit of the hard work.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. Today there's a little boy and we were going through his soft toys, and he picked every one of them up and he put it near his face and he squished their belly. And I went, oh, is that because you like the feel of it or the sound of the beads, like whatever it's made of? And he was like, he liked both. But he was like, I like the sound. And I was like, okay, so they had to make a sound. So we could have, his mother and I could have decluttered them based on what's maybe sentimental and not, but it was all came down to having him there. It's the sound of what it actually made. And so it's like, yeah, and unless you ask the questions, you can make your own assumptions and, not get to the bottom of why people hold on to things or keep things.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
have them in
absolutely.
the first place.
It's a beautiful story because I think for us as adults,
Mm.
we will naturally throw things out of our kids, and I am definitely one who will do that. And as the kids got older, my children are sort of 17 and 15 now. But now I have a box for them that they can leave what's important to them. So when they do a big room clean out,
Yeah.
they can put whatever they want in that box, but that box is going with them when they leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's saying, well, that actually really matters to you. It may not matter to me, but it's important to them. And
Mm.
I think that's a really important validation point for kids, is to going, what you care about really is important and you get to choose.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because that is really important for the kids to feel, rather than I do have clients in the past who'll be like, oh, mum, do I have to keep this because Nan gave it to me? And it's like, well, no, you choose if you want to. If you don't think it's that because it's not a value to you, mum can have it if she wants, but it's up to you. You choose.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
have the Nan box that when she comes over, it comes out. No, I'm kidding.
No. No, because some of those boxes would be really big.
Yes.
Because nans can be a problem with all of the gift giving that they like to do.
Yeah.
So what about in the workplace? What are some things that help within the workplace that people can do to help stay focused themselves and their productivity around productivity?
Yeah, well, it's a great question because we've seen a big movement in workplace design. We did have, the cubicle setup where people had their own space and they could have their own things. And then we moved out to this open planned communal type working space. And I understand why they thought that that was a good idea. But really quickly they realized that that wasn't a very effective way of learning, this open plan, because people like space. They like their own space. They like to have a place. Sometimes people love working with other people. Other times they need that time where they really need to do that deep work and they can't do it in a communal space. So we're seeing a different workplace design based around that. And I really like that. And it also in schools, exactly the same thing,
Mm,
open plan classes and all these designs. What we need to realize is that people learn differently, they think differently, and we need to have environments in workplaces that allow people to choose their preference of where they do their best work. And so a lot of people will say to me when I do workshops in workplaces, they'll say, but we don't have control over that. We're sort of like told where we need to be. And so, yes, it does need to come from management to allow people to not only create a space, like even having photos of a child
mm.
can have a really positive impact on somebody's psyche while they're at work, or allowing someone to have a water bottle sitting on their desk. And there are workplaces, if they're hot desking, people come
Yeah.
in with a sense of going, I actually don't know where my place is today. So it causes a heightened anxiety before people even start work. So we need to be really aware of this if we want not only just productivity in the workplace, but if we want people to be psychologically well in the workplace, but also just loving what they do. And we underestimate that value of routine for people. We undervalue that people do their best work in different ways, and having environments in a workplace that allows for all that is really important.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely, like, even just that opportunity of working at home where you could potentially do your deep work really easily with no distractions around you, maybe, or just
Yeah.
that familiarity of your environment, isn't it? Can also
Yeah, and I think a
assist.
lot of people go, I don't have control at home,
Yeah,
or vice versa. I have all the control at home and not at work.
yeah,
But what we're trying to do is definitely having a workspace that you can go to at home and not on the kitchen table, even if it's just an allocated desk. It does tell your brain it's time to focus. It's time to, like, as my kids now say, lock in, you know,
ah,
to,
yes.
to lock in. I use it way too often now. I think it's a brilliant term because it really does say it right. You just got to
Yeah, it
lock in
does.
and focus. But also understanding your own learning preference as well. So there's times where, yep, I want complete quiet. But there's other times where I'll go to a local cafe
Oh, yeah.
because it sparks my creativity, and it's a part of my human design where I really thrive in those environments. So if you're going to the same workplace every day where you don't have that flexibility of environments, how can you set up your preferences in the space that you have? And really consciously doing that. So if you feel an angst when you turn up to work, then there's a reason for that. So again, it's taking a step back, have a look at your space and go, how can I create this space so that it actually facilitates my focus? And sometimes it is having those boundaries to say to people, hey, you know how you always tell me like a quick 5 minutes, and knowing full well it's never a quick 5 minute chat, just saying right now I can't, but in an hour I can. And so it is not just about workplace environment and an understanding of how you think and how you learn, but the next step of that is actually reinforcing some of those boundaries with yourself and with others.
Yeah, definitely. And just even knowing like what part of the day that your brain works best for, say, deep work compared to, just those little tasks that you can do really easily. Like for me, it's the morning, but for someone else, it could be late afternoon is when their brain's firing and ready to go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, what a lot of us are doing is we're waking up in the morning when our brain is at its most productive, and we're picking up our phones and doing the quick dopamine hits. And what we're not realizing, and I speak about this in my workshops, that what we don't realize we're doing is we're actually fatiguing our brain before getting to the good stuff. And by doing those quick wins, so it might not even be social media. It might be, I'll just quickly check my email before I write that proposal. But by checking that email where you're looking at 10 different things within that half an hour first up, your brain automatically goes, oh man, I'm tired. I've now thought about all these things. I've task switched between so many different things. And so when you go to do your proposal, your brain is already depleted.
Yeah.
So what people really need to do and understand is, what is my priority for today? What is the thing that I really want to focus on for today, and get that done first. When your brain is tired, which is usually at the end of the day for people because they've done so much thinking, usually when your brain is tired at the end of the day, that's when you do all your low cognitive demand tasks, and whatever that looks like for you. Because not everyone sits at a computer, not everyone reads emails all day, but just think, where does my energy need to be best placed right at the beginning of the day? And for everything else, do it at the end of the day when your brain and body doesn't need to be sort of on as much.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you've shared that around our brains and the social media, like looking at our phones and taking that dopamine hit and getting more, and fatiguing so quickly though.
Yeah, well, so a lot of people are reporting when they turn up to work, they're
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah.
So that's what I hear way too often. And I've been hearing it for years. And I can see it. It's easy for me, being an external person that's looking at somebody, and that's, I guess, why they've got me working with them, is they want that outsider's perspective. But often what happens is they're turning up exhausted, and it could be because of the night before habits. So it could be, being on my phone the night before, or watching TV in the bedroom. So they're staying up late and they're not getting good sleep. So they're getting up in the morning and their brain's already tired. Or it could be what they're doing, those quick dopamine hits in the morning, or the quick, easy tasks that they're doing. And then by the time they have to do the really important work that needs their thinking, their brain goes, I'm tired. Sorry. And so what do? We either stop it and delay it, and guess what? It's all there tomorrow again for you.
Yes, to do the same thing again. Yeah. And not break that cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were to give, because now you're just making me think of schools and kids going to school and hearing kids say, I'm just so tired. And it's like, well, you haven't done anything today yet, but actually they probably have. So what's one thing that parents could do to support their children, do you think, in this whole digital distraction world that we're living in now?
It's probably not going to be what you think I'm going to say. It's actually the bookend habits. I call them the bookend habits. So what you do in the morning and what you do at the end of the day. So what are those things that you do that bookend your day? So people will go, oh, we've got to turn off technology. Well, that's not going to happen in today's society because we're all doing it. What we need to look at is, are we having calm, slow, nice routine, low arousal mornings that are getting ready for a good day? And then at the end of the day, are we calming our minds down? Have we got routines that are calm that allows people to go into a nice round off routine at the end of the day? And that way, what we're doing is by bookending the day, this whatever happens during the day happens during the day. But what we're doing is we're signaling to our brain and our body, hey, that all happened, but I've got you. We're here together. We can calm it down. And by doing that, what we're doing is we're just allowing our bodies to just decompress, to switch off. Not to cite my book title, but that's literally what it's about, is to switch off our thinking and to switch off our bodies and just to give ourselves a break. Because that high arousal, high energy levels that we're all living at, and our kids are living at, we're not giving our bodies and our brains time to just stop and time to pause, except when it all gets too much and we get sick.
Yes.
So,
our body's forcing us then to stop, isn't it?
Right. Our body's gone, you haven't been listening to me. You haven't been doing what you know. So I'm going to make you stop for a while. And rather than learning from it, we go, oh my gosh, I'm sick now. I've got to play catch up, and off I go. So those bookend habits, what you do in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day for your kids is really important. That's why devices out of rooms for that bookend habit at the end of the day is so important. And having like low level lighting and reading a book before you go to bed. And then in the morning, making sure that it's not, where's my shoe when lunch boxes haven't been made, or whatever age your kids are. So those bookend habits are the number one key.
Yeah, that's perfect. That sounds exactly what, and it's like the stuff that we were taught as kids, isn't it? And it's like bringing it all back now, and and putting the devices away for nighttime, and connecting back together again.
Yeah. And if you need half an hour in the morning to get up before everyone else gets up, or you need to stay up for half an hour just to have a bit of quiet, take it. Schedule it in if you need to, take it, because that is your sanity. Whether it doesn't matter if you're a parent, a caregiver, whatever, your kids, if we're talking about kids, need you to be at your best. And if you're not at your best and you feel heightened and high aroused and like really frantic all the time and like constantly switched on, there'll be a point where you'll break. And we don't want that. And your kids can't do that. Like, they can't see you like that because they're learning from you. So those bookend habits, just one of the little piece of the big puzzle. They're watching you, they're learning from you, you're their role model. So if you can create some bookend habits first for you, then your family unit will start to follow.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Angela, for all of the information you've shared. What is the best place for people to connect with you?
Website. It's angelalockwood.com.au. Everything's on there. Interestingly, I'm not that active on social media, but if you go to my website, you can, plug into the podcast of Distracted.
Oh, the podcast.
Plug in.
Yes.
Yeah, you can plug into any of the social medias and find out more about the work that I do. But I just want to say thanks, Narelle, so much for having me on here, because I hope people listening to this just go, okay, so it's not about doing more. It's taking a step back and then going, all right, what is it that I actually want to be focusing on right now? So this is not an episode about adding more to your plate, no more to-dos. This is taking a step back and going, where is it that I actually want to be focusing and need to be focusing?
Oh, that's a perfect way to finish. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.